So welcome everybody to our first Sunday workshop. This one's going to be about game design, project management, and that pitch. So just as a reminder, if you want to pitch your game, this upcoming Tuesday meeting for people to join, this is going to be a great meeting for you because you're going to we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end, and then also you can take the time after to work on your pitch and maybe ask us for feedback, ask other people for feedback. If you want to if you have a pitch ready or one that's almost done and you want to run it by everyone, you can do that as well. So we'll go over that. But first, we're going to talk about project management and game design. Project management. Oh yeah. First of all, if you're new, is anyone not in the Discord? No. Okay. Cool. That's what I imagine. So yeah, the plan for today, we're going to do project management, which is not something that is only related to game design. This is in a lot of fields, such as software engineering or engineering of other types. Really anything where you're building a product or a final good. So we're going to learn about agile and scrum techniques, as well as waterfall, which you'll know what all that means by the end of today. We're also going to learn about some software you can use to help you manage that, like Trello, Notion, ClickUp. I know every person kind of has their own favorites, so you can look at all of them and see which one you like. And then after project management, we're going to transition to game design documents. What are those? Why are they so important? And how do you make one? And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the pitch. So we're going to go over what a good elevator pitch looks like, so that when you are up here pitching your game, you can give a really good elevator pitch, have a bang-in presentation, and everyone's going to want to join your game. So project management, right? So I'm pretty sure we all know vaguely what this is. It's basically having a plan so that your project is always on task, on track, and it doesn't deviate too far and then everything falls apart. So it's good with indie games and really any games. Project management is needed everywhere. Again, software engineering is a big place where you'll see agile, which is what we talk here, any engineering, product development, any field really that has long-term projects like this, you're going to need project management because it's really the only way to track what tasks need to be done and how things are going. So there's three types we're going to talk about. We got waterfall, agile, and then kind of a Kanban board style. Each has pros and cons, and some might work better for you than others. It's kind of up to you to figure out how you think your project's going to flow and how it's all going to work for you. So first, we're going to talk about waterfall. This is probably the simplest one. Essentially, you have a series of discrete stages. So here the ones are requirements, design, execution, verification, and then deployment. And you basically go through each step one by one. So it's very simple. You have a clear sequence, and you go through that sequence. That's pretty much it. There's nothing too fancy about it. And the pros and cons, like I said, it's easy. You have a bunch of steps, and you go through them. It doesn't really get any more simple than that. And when you have a predictable process, so this may be something you've done before or something that's simple, this can work great, right? So for example, for the requirements phase, you might say, okay, what does my game need to feel like in terms of game design, right? And then you implement that, and then you test it, and then you deploy it. You're done. Simple game. So another good thing about waterfall is you don't really have the chance to get caught up on details. So for a small project or a time-limited project, you're trying to get your game done in one semester. When you have something like waterfall, the idea is that once you're done with a step, that step is done. You do not go back to that step. So once I'm done defining the requirements for my project, that's it. Those requirements don't change. So if you have a small project or limited time, that's actually better. It's like a blessing because you can't change those requirements, so there's no opportunity to add more.
Do you sometimes do that on an individual game mechanic? Like if you've got the rest of your game, like you want to do other stuff, but you've got one thing you need to nail down.
Yeah, absolutely. So this could refer to a whole project. Again, this is just one way of thinking of solving a task, process of solving a task. So you might think of waterfall for the whole game, where you find the requirements for the game, you build the game, you test the game, you ship the game. Or it could be you could split it up. So you have one mechanic, right? First we define the requirements for the mechanic, and then we we implement the mechanic, then we integrate the mechanic with everything else, then we ship the mechanic. Ideas like that. So it's not necessarily related to one project. So you keep that in mind as we're going through, but we're going to talk about it like in terms of for your project. Yeah, question in the back. In waterfall, you're technically not supposed to, but if it's something infeasible, then you might have to. But the whole idea of waterfall, like waterfall works when you don't change anything. So it would be better to stay on the conservative estimate side and not go too big. But you do have a valid concern there. If your requirements are too big, waterfall is not great, and that's actually the cons. It's really strict. The whole point of waterfall is once you're done, you're done. You don't go back to that step. So that is a con of it. Um, but kind of work out that con for very short projects or simple things. Waterfall is really good. Again, it doesn't allow your scope to creep out and get too big. You end up finishing something, always, whether it's good or not, who knows, but you end up finishing something because you go through each of the steps. So again, waterfall cons, like I said, really strict. You can't really go back. That's the whole point of waterfall. So if something is bad, let's say one of your requirements was like not well defined, and then you implement something and you realize, ooh, this isn't great. Like you're kind of stuck with that. So there are definitely cons to this. If one thing takes longer, let's say like your implementation is starting to really drag on. In waterfall, you're really not supposed to move on to that like bug fixing stage next. You're really supposed to finish that implementation. So again, in terms of like getting stuff done, waterfall is great because it forces you to get stuff done, but it doesn't really allow you to be flexible. You lose that flexibility. Um, late stage late stage changes are a no go, so that kind of can't go back. So if you're bug fixing and you realize, oh, this would be much better implemented this way, you're really not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to fix like little bugs or patch things together. Um, and it takes longer for the projects to be testable because you have to do everything before you get to the testing phase. So again, for some projects, this works great. For really small projects, for really simple projects, for maybe things you've done before and you just need to do again, it's great because you finish stuff, check them off, and then you're done. But again, for things that are more complex, it kind of falls apart a little bit. So now we're going to talk about Agile, which is kind of similar to Waterfall, but it gets rid of the con of you can't go back. The whole point of Agile is it's a loop. So we can see on the left here, this is Waterfall, and then on the right is Agile. So notice we start with like envision. So that's like, what do I want to make? So for example, in the case of a game, that could be, my pitch, right? I make my pitch, I have this vision for a game. And then you hop into the planning phase. So, this is like defining your requirements. You're saying, okay, what's the game going to have? What's going to look like? You plan that out, then you design it. So in terms of game, that might be, getting your mechanics up, doing everything you need to do to fulfill that plan you had. Then you test it, right? Important part of every game testing thing. You test, find all those bugs, and you also find out maybe mechanics that weren't so great. Maybe mechanics didn't feel good. Maybe the game was too simple, too complex. And then what you do is you take that feedback and then you go back into a planning stage. So you take what you had and what you learned and then you build on that. So the whole point of Agile is you kind of keep going around. You never really stop. You keep building, you keep iterating until you end up with like what you wanted out of it first. So an Agile project has again several steps, and the whole point is you keep getting feedback. That's the whole point of Agile. You build something, you get feedback on it. You say, okay, how do I address this feedback? Then you build a new thing, and then you test that, and you get the feedback. So this is really good for promoting collaboration. So when we say with a customer, that's obviously for software engineering, for example. You say, hey, do you like this product? Does it do everything you need to? And then the customer says, no, it does not. And I need this, or I don't really like this. I want it to do it this way. For games, that's asking your players or your testers, did you like this mechanic? Does this map feel good? Does the balance feel fair? And then they get back to you on that feedback. And you can make changes in Agile. That's the important part. If a mechanic doesn't feel good, you can go back into the planning stage and you can remove it. So you have a lot more flexibility with Agile. Um, just to go into kind of the cons of agile, it kind of back to where waterfall was good, agile might struggle a little. If you have a simple project or a small project, being in like a loop where you're forced to keep getting feedback can slow things down if again if it's not a big project, because if it's a simple project, you check the boxes, you go down, you fix all the little bugs, and you're done. But if you have agile going, you're trying to constantly test, and something that's simple might be getting a ton of feedback and overcomplicating things, especially for a project that's supposed to be short. You might keep getting feedback on things that maybe would be good enough to just kind of leave as is, but because you're supposed to fix all that feedback, it might start to overcomplicate things. So here's some popular tools you can use to kind of help out with things. Notion is Sarah's personal favorite tool. She likes that one a lot. I like Trello. I know Alex also likes Trello. That's what we use for Sumo Space. There's also Miro and Asana. I used Asana. Asana's fine as well. Um, Basically, what these do is they allow you to define tasks for people. So, for example, our Sumo Space board looks like has individual tasks for people. For example, design this element of gameplay, and then you can move it to like different, what are they called, boards, or maybe boards. So you'll have like a to do board, you'll have a in progress board, you'll have a completed board, and you'll have like a shipped board. So basically, tasks kind of move through, and then when they reach the completed section, you can go back, revisit them, say how does this feel, does this need to be tweaked. You can move it back to in progress if it does. You can move it to shipped if it's good to go. So like you have a visualization of the tasks everyone needs to do, and all that stuff. So it takes effort to set up, because you have to plan out discrete tasks. You have to say, what am I going to do, break it down, but it's definitely worth it. It's really going to help you track your progress, which is important, because otherwise you might start to feel like you're not doing anything when in reality you are. With these tools, you can see all the progress you've made. Oh, look, I implemented the movement and I did the shooting. Let me get this task done today, or this week, or whatever. So they're really important. I would highly recommend you look into them. Trello's free. I don't know about the other three. Notion's free. Notion's free. I don't know about Miro and Asana. Miro's free. I don't think Asana's free, or maybe there's a free tier. But yeah. So again, pros and cons of agile. It's flexible. You get tons of feedback. So again, for a complex project, that's great, because you need feedback, because you might not be thinking of all the little interactions your game has. You chunk the program to small pieces, like we said with those tasks, like Asana and stuff. You have small pieces to work on that you can then get feedback on and iterate on. You don't have a solid timeline like waterfall. So remember, in waterfall we said once you're done with the stage, you're done. That means that usually you want to not have one like part take too long, otherwise like you hold up the whole project. With agile, it's a little different. Just as like an anecdote, in software development, you do things in what you call sprints. So every 2 weeks, or however long you define it, you basically complete one agile cycle. You complete all your tasks, and then it's tested, and you come back to it in the next 2 weeks. So that's the timeline, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to tasks like waterfall does, where you have to implement everything in however long. Agile is like every 2 weeks, you're doing the best you can to make a better product or game. Um, and then again, cons. It's not easy to learn, because I think naturally people want to do waterfall. They want to get everything done, and then they want to show people, and then they want to fix all the little bugs, and then they're done. That's kind of just how people normally want to do things. But with agile, you have to force yourself to say, finish one thing and then get feedback on it, even if it's not done. You want feedback on whatever you have, so you can start making things better. And then a lot to set up for smaller projects. So when you have a simple project, probably may not be worth it, depending, just because you have to constantly make changes, and that can be really tiring. And really, both of these have pros and cons. Choose whatever works best for you. Um, it might not even necessarily be the best for your project, but whatever helps you, get in the right mindset to finish your project. So if you're really struggling with agile, and like you're kind of testing, like if you're not like fully committing yourself to agile, like you're not really going to get the best out of it. So just go for waterfall. Just like complete all your tasks like how you normally would. Or maybe you're trying to do like the waterfall side where you're trying to complete tasks, but like You're getting caught up. You don't have feedback. You don't know what feels good. Maybe try a little bit of agile. Try to get some feedback and then build on that. And the feedback doesn't have to come from like testers. It could come from maybe other people you're working with. If I work on the movement system, I'll hand it over to Alex or other people working on sumo space, and I'll be like, how does this feel, right? Because they haven't worked on it, so presumably they can give me at least some unbiased feedback, and then I can, if I'm hearing good things from them, then maybe I can reach out to a wider audience. I had my roommates test it out. I'm like, how does this feel? Does this move well? But yeah. So any questions about product management or project management before I move on? No, nothing. Okay, cool. So now we're going to talk about the game design document. That's what GDD stands for. So, game design document. What is it? It's a game design document. And you can see a few kind of like example pages. Basically what they are is it's defining the specs for your game. What is your game? What does it do? And you write everything here and then you don't change it. Or you minimize the changes to it. So, for example, might not really be able to see it. This is like a puzzle structure. So it's like how the puzzle works. So here, for example, you escape the basement and then you can do two things, but then either way you get back here. So that's the puzzle. Now notice there's nothing like super technical in here. It's just like a flow chart going down. But what you use that for is you write that down, and then when you're implementing it, when you're actually making it, you keep referring back to the game design document. What that does is it allows you to have like a record of everything, like how this is going to go. You can always keep referring back to it, and you're not going to get like kind of lost and like forget to implement a stage, and then you're like, I didn't do that. It's all there. And also, again, it prevents that scope creep we talked about, where like something might, you have an idea, and then what if I did this as well, and then what if I added this, and then all of a sudden you have this huge project. You write it down in one place. Your ideas are organized. You have a roadmap and like baseline features. So again, for example, you have, each step of the puzzle. Now, how you implement those might be a little creative, but like what you need to do, and you don't need to go super far outside that. It also helps others understand your game. This is actually really important. If you want to like tell someone about your game, you can either give them an elevator pitch, but that's only good for getting people the idea of your game. If you give someone your game design document, they should basically know what your game is, how it's played. They should know a good amount of the game. They might not know like the specific, what every room looks like in your game, but they should know like the feel of your game, maybe even like what your control scheme is. They should like have a general idea of the gameplay. If it's a puzzle game, they should know like what are the puzzles like. Do I move things around? Do I inspect objects? What do I do here? So that's really what you want to get across. And you can change game ideas before you develop them fully. So you can use this in an agile way, where you get some testing, one of the steps of the puzzle isn't feeling great, strike it out, just skip it completely, maybe something like that. So let's see an example of a game design document. Let's see. It is here. So this is a game design document for, I want to guess Doomworld, since it's doomworld.com. Yeah. So, or maybe Doom. I don't know. I think this is multiplayer. Okay. So let's skip ahead here a little bit. So yeah, here, like these pages might look like, what's the point? But this is kind of almost important because you have the demo loop. So you do the title and credits, demon facing credits, then a cinematic, then you play the demo, then you get the high scores, right? So this is like a simple flow chart of what happens when you play the demo, I guess. And keep in mind, I know nothing about this game, so I'm going through, but we're going to see that this game design document does a good job in letting me know about the game. So right now, I know how the demo is going to run, and that might seem kind of inconsequential, but again, let's say you have multiple people working on a project, someone might have a different idea of how to do this. Maybe they want to show the high scores first, and now maybe you assumed, the high scores are obviously going to be last, and then maybe that assumption was wrong, and now you have a problem somewhere. So the game design document lays out basically all your ideas. End of game, right? Now notice there's 3 different ways to end the game. You can abort, you can die, or you can win. And each one has a little bit of kind of detail about it. So hold on, let me zoom in a little bit maybe. That'd be helpful. There we go. So when you die, I guess the screen pulls back and you can see the maze, or your viewer remains in the maze. Window over of a dead guy, and then you can continue if you don't control panel overview. Control panel is mentioned above. So this is like clearly defining what happens when you die, right? And again, this is important because when I die, I kind of want to know what happens, and this is laying it out. Now, there's nothing technical here. It doesn't say, okay, the camera is going to pull back and zoom out. It's just saying, it just says it pulls. You pull back to see self die. So you see, maybe it's an animation, maybe it's like a pre-rendered thing. I don't know. I don't need to know that, but I need to know, generally what's going to happen, so that when I give this to someone, they can these are the requirements for what happens when you die. Let's just do a few more pages. Oh, here, this is a good one. Characters, right? So notice, these aren't terribly long, but I think they do. I did read these. They do a good job of giving you an idea of the character. So we have Lorelei Chen, who has age, weight, height, right? We have a physical description, character description, advantages, disadvantages. That's it. So and now, okay, let me just clarify. For like a project where characters are like more important, or like, lore matters more, you might have longer descriptions. But this is a Doom game, so I assume not too much lore. So it gives you enough for, let's say, an artist who's working on this to convey this stuff in maybe their model. So, for example, in the physical description, it's a scar on left shoulder from rock climbing accident. So when your character artist is going through, they can make sure they can include that if necessary. In the character description, we have like fiercely competitive, intimidates most people. So maybe if you have someone doing sound, they know what kind of voice lines you're going for, or like the general feel of the character. And again, for someone just learning about your game, they know who these characters are. I know that she's competitive. She lost a bet, which that meant she had to pull her application for a glory post. So like I kind of know maybe her motivations for things, and it's all those little things that can kind of come into the game design document and then give you an idea of like what's going on in the game. Are there any questions about anything I've covered so far regarding game design documents? No? All right. Come back here. Okay, so this is a template we have for game design documents. If you want to just have a template, I would highly recommend maybe working from a template if you've never done this before. So if you want to go, we'll post this slideshow after. So if you don't want to go there now and you want to go there later, feel free. But if you do want to go, tinyurl.com/gdd game design document cogs. I'll give a few seconds if anyone's going there. But yeah, this is just a game design document template. I would fill it in. You can probably wait to do that after the pitch, but yeah, what's up? I don't know if I have a bad document, but what a bad document would be just like not clearly explaining things. So for example, one of the things that's nice in a game design document that you might not think about is how does the UI function, right? Like, is there a UI? Is it, skeuomorph? Like, is it appear in the world? Is it just overlaid on the screen? What is the inventory like, right? Like let's say I don't mention the inventory at all, then I'm like, okay, well, can I even hold items? How big is the inventory? And again, you don't have to get technical with this, but saying like, you have an inventory with, a moderate amount of slots, for example. That might be good enough, again, depending on the genre of your game. It is very, genre specific. But you want someone to be able to read your game design document and understand that game. They might not know every single detail, like someone who's, played it completionist, but they should like know your game and be able to talk about it with someone else, maybe. You have a question? Yeah, that's a good point. So like your game design document should be a reference for you so that you know what you need to implement when you're programming or when you're doing your art or when you're doing your voice lines or whatever. But it should also be clear that other people know what your game is. So if your game design document can do those two things, then you probably have a good game design document. But if it there's also the thing is you want to be somewhat concise. Like we saw those character descriptions. I'm sure like one of the things was like, oh, they got like it was like an application pulled back. They didn't really give more information than that, and I think that was enough because it gave me insight into maybe a motivation this character has and maybe a little bit of their personality. But I didn't need the full backstory of, oh, maybe they angered this person and this person out of spite went to this person and then they withdrew the application or whatever. So, again, considering the context of your game, but more likely than not, you want to give, it's a balance. You want to give enough without going overboard. So it's kind of, what's the word? Uh, Not objective, subjective. But yeah. So finally, any questions on game design documents before I move on to like the pitch? Okay. So we're gonna talk about the pitch. So as a reminder, this Tuesday is going to be where everyone submits their pitches. We will be having a. Is Bridge here? Okay. Oh, hi. Did you post the form yet? Yeah, do that now because since we're talking about it. If you were at our meet, was everyone here at our meeting last Tuesday, or who wasn't? You weren't? Okay, a few people. So if you weren't, don't worry about it. Basically, what we talked, or one of the things we talked about, was this Tuesday we're going to have a meeting, which is called our group formation meeting. Basically, what's going to happen is people are going to come up. They're going to give their game design pitch, so an elevator pitch, as well as like kind of like a few slides on what their game needs, what their game's about, what their game's going to look like. Very concise little presentation. And then once everyone's done that, people are going to kind of go to the group that maybe called them the most. They're like, oh, I really liked this kind of game, and then they're going to you guys are going to start working on that game. So what we're going to do now is take some time to work on and talk about the pitch part, so that you guys can all have really awesome pitches. So if you do want to make a pitch this Tuesday, you can make a really good one. And just a reminder, you do not have to do that, but if you want to get a group for a game idea you have, feel free to make a pitch. But you don't have to if you just want to find a group and work with other people. So the first part is the elevator pitch. The reason it's called an elevator pitch, I believe this comes from business, is when you're in the elevator with someone, you have a limited time. You have to give them a pitch that's going to stick with them, that's going to get them interested, but you only have 30 seconds because after that they're walking out the elevator. So you need to get them interested before then. You can't keep talking for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You don't have them like locked in a room. It's just an elevator. So 30 seconds. It's the gist. It's what is my project? What is interesting about it? And what this does is, again, it should lead into another conversation where you're going to tell them more. The elevator pitch is very short. It's what is my game? What's interesting about it? And then they say, oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more. Then you can launch into your full thing. And then we end with, and we have some examples here. So it might be a business card or LinkedIn if you're doing business. It might be your Discord or contact info if you say, hey, if you want to hear more about this, contact me here. And then they will, because you gave such an awesome elevator pitch that they were interested. So of an elevator pitch, introduce yourself, title of your game, genre and mechanics. Don't go too overboard here. Try to use examples. For example, I want to make a game. It's a 2D Metroidvania, kind of like Metroidvania. What makes your game unique? Maybe mention if you have a twist. What kind of assets you will need. You can change this around depending on your needs, but that's an example. So we will need 3D artists, 3D assets, and how do we reach you? My project is called this. You can come see me over here afterwards, etc. So here's an example by Sarah. I'm just going to read it out, even though I'm not Sarah. So just Hey everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm a junior in IT and the vice president of COGS. My game is called Last Stop, Your Heart, a visual novel dating game where you have to romance the Rutgers buses. The game involves you speaking to the buses and making dialogue choices to advance your romantic interest. My game incorporates a unique theme of buses and some elements of psychological horror. For my game, there's going to be a lot of writing and art assets needed, since it's a visual novel. If you have any questions or want to help me make this game, my Discord tag is that, and my email is that. Thank you. So as you saw, that was pretty much every element here. Introduce yourself, give a little backstory. What is your game? The genre, so it was a bus dating sim. What makes it unique? Psychological horror. What do you need, and how do you reach? Easy, right? So now we're going to kind of go into, we say homework. Obviously, it's not homework. We want you to have fun. If you're not having fun making a pitch, then, something, maybe you're not passionate about that game project, or like don't feel like you need to, is my point, right? Like if you're not like, oh, I really want to make this game, and you're kind of like, oh, I have to make a pitch. You don't have to make a pitch. You can just, see if any other projects spark your interest. But if you do want to make a pitch because you have this idea, you're like, oh, I want to make a game. I've thought about this for a while. These are the not requirements, but this is what you should do for, again, the group formation meeting this Tuesday. Brainstorm it, put it into a game design document. So again, this is very simple for now. This might just be like kind of like the pitch, like what is the genre, what are the unique twists, all that stuff. Then come up with an elevator pitch. You're going to give this on the Tuesday meeting. You can also choose a project management style. You can also wait to do this until you've like, talked with the group you get. Maybe some people join you, and then you can say, "All right, guys, how are we feeling? About the complexity of this project. What kind of project management do we want to roll with?" And then after that, and then again, once you're with your group, you can create your space in Trello or Notion or Asana, whatever. And maybe someone in your group has used Trello before, and they're like, "I really like Trello," and you're like, "All right, let's just use Trello." So you could do that. Are there any questions so far about the pitching, like especially like what you're going to need to do next Tuesday? Yeah. Yeah, you can do 30 seconds. In our example pitch, like last Tuesday, we also had, like, for example, you could have like 3 little slides. It was like, title of your game, maybe some screenshots of what it's gonna like, what you're kind of going for. It's like, oh, I want snappy motion like this game, a 2D art style like this game, for example. And then you could maybe include short videos, but like for videos, try to keep them under 20 seconds because anything longer than that, you're kind of like it might be a little too long. It's just to show like really quick like beats, and the presentation itself should really be no longer than like 2 or 3 minutes. Shorter is fine. I would not go longer though. So 2 to 3 minutes, absolute maximum. All right, that's pretty much it for this. Do you have a question? Oh, sure. Yeah, I can open up the Sumo Space Trello board. Where is it? Sumo Space Chat. Oh, this is laggy. It's horrible. Okay. Down. Yes. There it is. This is horrible. Okay. So this is an example Trello board for our game Sumo Space. That's me, Alex, Aiden, Abe. Abe here? Abe. Um. There it is. Look at this. So as you can see, we have a bunch of boards. So we have main idea, goals, current tasks, in progress, finished tasks, or finished tasks, future tasks. So the idea is we have all of these, they're called cards, like all these tasks. So for example, one that's easy to explain. Uh, uh, explosive force on collision. So what that means is that when you collide with someone, so this actually came apart as agile like development. Our game is physics based, so the whole point is like your little spaceships, and you're trying to push people out of the way or push people out of the arena. When two ships collided, they just kind of stick together because that's how physics really works. But that doesn't really feel great because you feel like when you hit someone, they should like bounce away. So what we did is, or are doing, is in progress, is going to add an explosive force when you collide, so that like just a small force, so that it looks like the ships like collide and like bounce away, as opposed to just kind of sticking. So again, that's an example of agile coming into play because we're testing the movement and then the collision with the ships, and we're like, it doesn't feel like it could feel better. You could iterate on this and make it feel better. So that's like, for example, how that came about. So again, that's how you can use these boards. You can also see there's certain tasks assigned to certain people. So I've got modified dodge, of course. Alex has these ones, all the networking ones. Any questions about Trello or project management again, since we brought this up? Other ones are similar. Notion's similar. Asana is very similar. I've never used Miro. Um, but yeah, so again, this is just a way to keep organized, and it's a little bit of work to set this up. I won't lie, because you have to figure out what tasks you need, and you really need to think about what's everything we need. What are the subtasks? Some of these have subtasks, like this one, for example. has 12 subtasks. So, it's getting a match start to completion. So you hit. Is this hit start?
Yeah, you hit connect.
So you hit connect. You queue up. So what happens? So you have to be able to connect to the match. Then you have to ready up. Then it has to sync all the players. Then you have to be put into the lobby. Then you have to sync the lobby. Then you have to load the map. You have to start the game. You have to play the game. The game has to end somehow. Then you have to show some kind of score or some end screen. And then finally you get disconnected from the game, right? So all those things are separate tasks that you have to, do. How does the game end? What determines if the game ends? Is it score based? Is it time based? Are there multiple ways it can end? Down here we have error disconnect. What happens if the player they kick their Ethernet cord out and now they have no internet anymore? What do you do? So all these things are like subtasks of something that seems simple. Oh, you hit start, it loads the game, and then you play the game, and then you're done. But really, you have to figure out every single step here so that you can, truly kind of work on it and like you have like a clear objective. That's the goal. Give like a clear objective of what you're supposed to be working on. Any questions about that since I brought that up? Are we good? All right. So that's kind of